Hello everyone, it's the Metal Geek. How y'all doing? Today, I'm going to welcome you to the Clone Wars. No, not that Clone Wars. This Clone Wars. Have you ever heard the saying that retro gaming is the new gaming? Well guys, classic gaming is back. Whether it's Pac-Man chowing down that ghost or Donkey Kong throwing a barrel on Mario's head. Go Jumpman, go. Retro classic gaming is kind of where it's at right now. Now don't get me wrong, PS4, Xbox One, Wii U, 3DS, they are all very prominent in our culture right now, but what about the good old NES? What about the good old Sega Genesis? Well, they're making a comeback, and they're making a comeback in a big way. Now, my friends, you don't need to be classic gamers to want to play classic games. Maybe you were a big gamer back in the day. Maybe you're still a big gamer today like me. Now, maybe you've never picked up a controller or a joystick in your entire life, but you want to give gaming a try. I hear it all the time, people who say, hey, I would love to do gaming, but this stuff just eludes me. I don't know what I'm doing, and I really don't have the time to figure it out. If you're an adult and you have adult responsibilities, the reality is you probably don't have a lot of time to learn how to do the gaming. So when it comes down to wanting to relax, you're probably going to sit down with a movie, a television show, or a book first, which are all awesome. But if you want to try some interactive entertainment out, that's going to be where your video games come into play. And this is where retro gaming comes into play. Why? Because it was just a much simpler time for gaming back then. In fact, a joystick and a button. That's it. That's all you needed to play a video game. It's no surprise that whether you've gamed before or you want to learn how to game now, that retro gaming really is where it's at. And that's because if you've gamed before, especially if you were a big gamer back in the day, the nostalgia factor is big and huge, and it's a great deal for you as a gamer. If you've never really gamed before, or you've only gamed for a little bit, then retro gaming seems a little easier to get into than today's modern games that do demand a lot from the gamers. It's the simplicity and the fun of the game that really counts. No wonder why cell phone gaming has caught on so well today, because all you have to do is touch a screen to play. Simple, easy, and fun. Now don't get me wrong, I still game today, and I love complicated games. That's right, I'm looking at you, Bayonetta 2. But sometimes I just want to sit down and play a good, simple, classic retro game. And that's where these come into play. Clone consoles. Now, if you don't own an old classic NES, Atari, ColecoVision, Television, Sega Genesis, Master System, or whatever classic gaming consoles that you like, well, getting them today can be a little hard and a little expensive. Okay, let me rephrase that. Not so much hard to get them, because they're all over the place, especially on Amazon and eBay. But have you looked at the prices? I mean, sure. I mean, now you can go to GameStop.com, and you can actually buy a lot of retro stuff, including the systems. And the NES, for example, runs about $50, and that may not seem like a lot, but this plays NES games, and it's only $20. In fact, I only pay $18. Classic retro consoles. Well, let's just say sometimes they're collector's things and sometimes they're not. If you want the authentic, then yeah, go for it. Absolutely. You can't entirely replace an authentic console. There's no real absolute way to do that. But what I'm about to talk about today, clone consoles, you can come pretty close, especially if all you're trying to do is just get a little bit of retro gaming in, or to introduce somebody else to retro gaming. So let's start off by defining clone consoles. Well, you probably have an idea of what this is now based on just what I've already said, but clone consoles are just that. They're consoles that are able to play classic games, but the consoles within themselves are not made by the original companies. In other words, it's another company that has made a console that can play, let's say, Nintendo NES games, but the console that they made is not an original NES, it's their own variation of it. So it's a clone. This, for example, is a console that can play Super Nintendo games, Sega Genesis games, and the regular NES games. These are perhaps some of the most popular clone consoles out there because you kind of get your bang for your buck. They're a little more expensive, but they also play a bunch of different retro games. This one's called the Retrobit Entertainment System by Retrobit Gaming. This one plays Nintendo NES games only. Again, it's $18 that I paid for this. This is about $65, but it also plays, again, what this could play, but it also plays Super Nintendo games and Genesis games. Now, owning the original console, nothing wrong with that, because as long as it's in good condition, it can do everything that it did whenever it came out, 20, 30 years ago, whatever the case might be. But if you're on a budget, that's where these clone consoles come into play, because, to be honest with you, they work really well. And if you have a collection of them like I do, the compatibility won't be much of an issue. So let's talk a little closer about what each of these consoles are. Now, I'm going to show you the consoles that I have, the clone consoles that I own, but I'm going to bring up some other ones for you too. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of info out there for all of you who are thinking about getting into retro gaming, because these might be the way to go for you. So, let's go a little bit more in depth with each of these consoles are. Okay, so to start, there are two different types of clone consoles. There's the plug and plays. Now these already have games installed on them, you just plug them into your TV and you play. And then there's your hardware clones. These are the ones that require that you use the original cartridges to play. Now the plug and play systems, this one's a little bit different, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. But the plug and play consoles, they tend to be a little bit more popular because they already have the game installed on it. You just play, there's no fuss, there's no muss, you're just right into it. The most popular plug and plays right now are made by a company called At Games. Now what's great about At Games is that they get the official license for these. That means they're actually producing these with the permission of the companies that hold the rights to the original consoles or the name. Now some of the licenses that At Games is working with is, well, the Atari, the ColecoVision, the Intellivision, and perhaps the biggest company, Sega. Now again, the upside of plug and plays is that you just plug them in and play. But there is a downside. The downside is that whatever games is already installed on the system is all that you get. What that means is that you cannot expand the number of games that are on these systems. The Atari comes with 100 games installed on it. I can't add any more games to this system. No! But it's 100 games, Metal Geek! How is that bad? Well, it's not necessarily bad, but it's missing games that I want. This, for example, has Centipede, Millipede, Asteroids, some really great classic games. But hey, yo, explain to me why you don't have Pac-Man installed on you. That's right, there's no Pac-Man, there's no Miss Pac-Man, and that's because At Games couldn't get the license for those games. You also don't have Donkey Kong because Nintendo still owns the rights to Donkey Kong and they didn't license it to be put onto this. So that's what's frustrating about these systems, is that whatever you get, you can't really expand. With the exception of, well, that's right, Sega's different. They are the geeks of their generation. I said this one was different, and I wasn't kidding. Well, This one's different too. This is their console and this is their handheld. And what's great about this is that even though this is a plug and play, it has a cartridge slot on it. And what that means is that, okay, this has 40 official Genesis games installed on it, though there are additional 40 homebrew games, so it's a grand total of 80 games. But if there's a game on this that you love, and it's not installed on this actual machine, plug in the cartridge and you can play it. Well, I mean, for the most part, there is some compatibility issues with some cartridges, but a good 85% of the cartridges, or better, that I've tried since I've owned this, have worked fine. In fact, it's worked better than some of the other Sega clones that I've seen out there. We're going to come back to this, and we're going to come back to this as well, but real quickly explain what makes this one expandable is it has an SD card slot on the top, which means that you could actually use ROMs. Now, if you own a game and you want to play it on this, if you can find a way to back it up into a BIN file, you can actually put it on the SD card, plug it in, and play on this system. Now, your plug and plays come in various formats. The AtGames plug and plays, they tend to mimic their consoles. In other words, even though it's just a plug and play, they actually make it look like the original consoles. And controllers are external, and oftentimes the original controllers can be used on these. Unfortunately, because the controllers were made differently for these consoles back in the day, you can't really use the originals, but the ones that do come with these consoles are exact replicas of the original controllers. Now, plug-and-plays can actually come as controllers themselves. It's just a controller with wires on the end that plugs into the TV, and you just play right off the controller. It might have one game installed, it might have 10 games installed, in some cases more, in some cases less. But it's just a controller that you plug to your TV and you play. There's no console, there's no fuss, there's no muss. It literally is just a controller that you plug into your TV and play the game. I tend to prefer the AtGames versions of plug and plays because I like how the old systems look, and I like that they're paying homage to these old systems by replicating the looks. Smaller, yes, but it still replicates how the systems looked back in the day, and I like having the external controller. These are the second versions of clones. Basically, these require that you have the cartridges to play. Now, the advantage is that means whatever you have in your current library for classic gaming, well, you can use it on this. For the most part, there are some cartridge compatibility issues, and I'll explain that in a bit. But it also means that whatever games you don't own, you have to go out there and find, and there are some very expensive classic games. Personally, I own 2 hardware clones. Going back, this is the Retrobit Entertainment System for NES games. This is the Retron 3. This is made by Hyperkin, and this is made by Retrobit Gaming. These two companies are kind of the competitors to each other. Now, Hyperkin does make a single clone console that plays NES games like the Retrobit, and they also do make a double clone console that plays both NES and Super NES games. Equally, Retrobit makes a double clone console that does the same thing, and a triple clone console that does the same thing as well. Compatibility is a little bit different between the two, but they're generally the same idea. Now, Hyperkin did go out of their way not too long ago, maybe about a year and a half ago, to release what's called the Retron 5. Now that's a thing of beauty. That is a thing of beauty. It plays 5 different consoles, technically more if you have, well, import stuff, and I'll explain that maybe in another video. But it plays NES, Super NES, Genesis games, Game Boy games, and Game Boy Advance games. And it's all really, it's mind-blowing, okay? Coming back to this is kind of the unique one because not only is it a plug and play, it's also a hardware clone, so to speak. I mean, it still works off an emulation software, but it does take the original cartridges. This is kind of the best of both worlds, and this is probably one of my favorites. Compatibility issues aside, having 80 games installed, 40 official Genesis games, and being able to use cartridges on top of that, it's amazing. It's a great way to get into retro gaming if you don't have your original Genesis anymore, or if you've never even had one. to be honest with you, this one actually was more compatible with cartridges than this one. And that's why this one's very unique. Now, if I were to pick a favorite, again, this is mine. This is my favorite because of what it can do. But this is also one of my favorites because of the SD card compatibility, and it's a portable Sega Genesis. It's awesome. Rechargeable batteries. Tweet it, guys. So yeah, I do tend to favor the hardware clones because I do like to expand my library, and at any given time, if I want to play a game that's not installed on a plug-and play, then I can expand it, and I really like to be able to play what games I want to play. But Metal Geek, you keep telling us all this information and stuff. Can you just kind of give us some ideas of which one to buy? Well, guys, whatever one really tickles your fancy. Okay, what is the reasons you're going to buy this for, if you're going to buy any of these? Are you buying it for yourself? Are you buying it to introduce to someone else? Well, if you're more about getting into this quick and easy and you just don't really want to mess around with stuff, then you're going to go the plug-in place. But which one do you buy? Which one's the best? Well, again, it depends on what you're buying it for. If it's for nostalgia reasons and say you grew up with the Atari, then you're probably going to gravitate towards buying the Atari. And this is where I'm going to get a little bit more in depth about each of these consoles, at least the ones that I own, and I'll give you some more at the end. Now with the Atari, it comes with 2 wireless controllers, which is pretty awesome, but you know, I'll tell you how they work and how they don't work in a moment. It also comes with the hardware, or I should say software, because it's just a chipboard with emulation units on it. The games are installed on it. It does have a little bit of hardware in it. You got your controller ports, you got your DC adapter, and you got your basically your wires to hook to your TV here. That's hardwired into the system, guys. It doesn't come out, just so you know that. You got your various buttons, your power buttons, your menu buttons, your pick buttons. There's all kinds of stuff here. It emulates the switches from the original Atari, which were like these little metal toggle switches. Here they're push buttons. It makes it a little bit easier. It's also plastic, so you know it's not going to break as easy as say if they were trying to emulate it with the little buttons. This was a good idea to go. You can see that they do the wooden finish up here, so it looks like it's wood. It's just a plastic kind of sticker decal, so it's not going to be real wood, but it looks real enough if you're from a distance, and it does kind of give the nostalgia factor. And then we come back to the controllers, which are very authentic. I mean, really, it's an authentic controller button, the way it moves. Now, the problem is that this is wireless, and you're probably thinking, Metal Geek, why is it a bad thing? Well, it's a bad thing because it's not true wireless. It's not Bluetooth. It's actually infrared. I actually cover this in my review video for the Sega Genesis Classic Gaming Console by AtGames. And if you would like to watch that video, just click right up there and you can check it out. The problem with infrared controllers is that you pretty much have to be aiming it right at the system for it to read. I mean, the build of the controller is actually not that bad. It is a cheaper plastic, but it works well enough. It's just that if you have to sit there and literally point it at the system, it's not a whole lot of fun. Now, don't get me wrong. If you're sitting about 8 to 10 feet back and you're pointing in the general direction, it does work well enough. But not everybody has that luxury. A lot of people are going to be close to their television set or close to their console, and they're not going to want to point it directly at to play the game. But this is where AtGames had foresight, because it does take the original Atari controllers. You plug them in right in the front. So you don't even have to use these. You could go ahead and for about maybe $10 or so a piece or less, you can get official Atari 2600 controllers and use it on this. That was a good idea. But so then when you move on to like the Intellivision or the ColecoVision, the original controllers don't actually work on these, and the reason being is, well, in this case with the Intellivision, the controllers were hardwired in, so I can see why AtGames wouldn't want to do that with this. What they opted for was an Atari-like controller port. In fact, it is the Atari controller port, and they made authentic replicas of the original controllers. Controllers are actually immensely well done, and in some cases even better than the original controllers. But the downside is you can't use the original controllers. So again, AtGames had the foresight to create wired controllers for this one instead of wireless, and that was a very good idea. Same with ColecoVision. Now, I haven't done a
review
review for this
ColecoVision.
one. I told you I will review you when I feel like it. Stop it. This is my video right now. You be quiet. Now, one of the bigger flaws that this does have is it doesn't have save states, and what that means is that you cannot save your progress in the game if a game requires saves. The same can be said about this little guy. Why won't you save? So technically, while you can play, say, Phantasy Star 2, 3, and 4 on these, you can't save your progress, so you're just gonna frustrate yourself if you try. All in all, any one of these systems can be a great way to start. Whether you want to start with plug and plays because of the ease of it, or you want to do the hardware because you can buy the cartridges and you can keep updating, it's awesome. Now, if you do run into a system where the wireless controllers don't work, like I told you, and yeah, I'm looking at these things right here, you can often use the originals, and as I said before, if you can't get the originals or you don't have the originals, you can use aftermarket controllers. These are made by third-party companies and in of themselves are clone controllers. So I hope this helped all of you today. Whether you're going the plug and play route or the hardware route, or you just want to collect in general. I mean, go ahead, buy them all if you want. I mean, this you can get on sale oftentimes for about 30 bucks, this for about 30 bucks. Any one of the Intellivision, ColecoVision, Ataris can go from about $30 to $45. 65 bucks for something that plays almost every game out there when it comes to retro, and I mean $18. I mean, guys, if you can't or don't want to go out there and buy an original console, or try to find them by nefarious ways, tell me you have it. Tell me you have it. Take all my money. If you just don't want the hassle of trying to find the original hardware, and it can be iffy, if you're buying off from eBay or Amazon, you might get an old, basically, system that doesn't work, somebody who's selling their non-functional systems, and you don't want that to happen. So these clone consoles are a very good way to get going. They may not fully replace the originals, but they do what they're intended to do. So have fun with them. This is the Metal Geek saying, have a great one, guys. Clones. There are clones everywhere!
Who told you that you rule the world? Who told you that you had all control? I tell you that you lost all control and never, ever ruled my world. You lied to me, said you were on my side. I've got no more room to hold all this inside. So stop talking now, I don't care.